And here are our lovebirds taking a relaxing evening stroll together. Now, notice how affectionate they are. This could be you. And here is our happy couple at home. Now, it's important to make your man feel at ease when he comes home from a long day at work. Now, when it's time for lovemaking, Dan kisses Sue and touches her breasts.
There's a dream in the back of my mind. Across the tracks is where I'll find my true pretty trailer. Tell the pennies in the den. My common stove is broke again. Neighbor, neighbor, call the neighbor. We'll have dinner.
Prologue.
Transgenderism must be eradicated from public life entirely. The whole preposterous ideology.
That was bizarre, wasn't it? So, my name is Skylar Sakura Sabo, and I am a transgender woman. I am also non-binary. If you're new here, welcome to my channel, Turbo Core. No, it's not called that. Welcome to my channel, Turbo Queer, where I'm not just queer, I'm turbo queer. And this is Pride Month. Isn't that exciting? Look, I know that it's been rough. Because the battle is not over. I don't know about y'all, but I have dealt with a pretty fucking horrible year. And I know I'm not alone in that. I released an album at the tail end of last month called Catharsis. It is exactly what the name implies. It is a cathartic metal, ska, and punk album. The purpose of this album is to use queercore music to get off some steam. And I know that we all need to get some fucking steam off for real. And look, yeah, it is kind of an ad. I just promoted an album I worked on. I want to talk about a movie that I also feel is very cathartic from a queer and trans perspective. And that movie is called But I'm a Cheerleader. And I think that if you're watching from home, you should also seek out this movie as well. Chapter 1. This is a movie review, correct? Look friends, I understand. You want to get straight to the meat and potatoes of this video, where I intersectionally dissect But I'm a Cheerleader, pick it piece by piece, part by part, limb by limb, and expose all of the organs for you to see. Are you aware that nuance is never that simple? Nuance is never that fucking simple! And that means we have to do an obligatory flashback in time, find out when this movie was made, why it was made, who it was made for, and the culture. After all, culture is everything, right?
Don't know. The reason is that many of us have to wear masks because if we're seen on TV or in the leader post, we could lose our jobs, put the custody of our children in jeopardy, and because we still do not have protective legislation in the province of Saskatchewan.
The 90s were an interesting time. because just prior to the 1990s was the major curse of the Reagan era, which sprung up the failure of the war on drugs, the multi-level marketing scam called trickle-down economics, the rise of the bipartisan-supported religious right-wing watchdog groups, and more importantly for this video, the complete lack of acknowledgement of the AIDS epidemic. Queer and trans people were upset about the lack of funding for AIDS research, which killed 89,000 people. When it comes to this issue, Ronald Reagan turned the other cheek for 7 out of his 8-year term. So, of course, when the 1990s rolled around, a lot of the counterculture from that era reflected on that neglect, among many other things. We began to see a rise of feminism in queer and punk spaces. For the first time in some of these spaces, domestic abuse and sexism was being talked about more and more at a mainstream level, even within those punk communities. Because for such a movement that focused on rejecting the mainstream, punk rock up until this point was very centered on cisgender straight white male. Women were not really given a lot of spotlight at this point, even within the punk movement. And that's not even getting into the discrimination that queer bands went through. Not only that, punk itself began to go mainstream, with Dookie and Smash topping the charts. Nirvana in particular were vocal about their anti-homophobic and anti-sexist messaging. Kurt Cobain, singer, guitarist, and songwriter of Nirvana, would say stuff like, "I would like to get rid of the homophobes, sexists, and racists in our audience. I know they're out there, and it really bothers me." In a 1993 article of The Advocate, Kurt Cobain would say, "I'm not gay, although I wish I were, just to piss off homophobes." Now, this could have been an egg moment for Kurt Cobain, but I don't think we'll ever be able to find out for sure. But my point here is that a majority of the media that came out in the 1990s, whether it was on television or a band, largely centered itself on the aesthetic or the messaging of anti-establishment. A lot of it was very baseline and safe for corporate consumption. Nothing that really pushes the envelope towards questioning the status quo. But media and art definitely did take a bite out of hierarchy more so than it did before. If the messaging did push that envelope, it was mostly underground. Even pop music at this point was bringing into question the legitimacy of some of the more toxic elements of our society, such as bigotry and toxic masculinity. With that said, racism and homophobia were also brought into question at a mainstream level. This could not have been possible without the queer revolutions of the 1970s and 80s, as well as the newfound wave of feminism that sprung from the Riot Grrrl movement. This was also in large part due to the effort of advocates like Kimberly Crenshaw, who in 1989 put forth the language that we use to have these discussions about how racism and homophobia and other intersections of oppression are rooted in a systemic fashion, as no single oppression is a single issue. And because of the blood, sweat, and tears that queer people put in their dues for, queer people were finally becoming more accepted. Politicians were coming out as gay. Anti-gay legislation were being relaxed or totally eradicated. Workplace and medical discrimination were actually being tackled to varying results. It was like we were seeing progress for the very first time. But progress does not exactly mean solved, as electroshock therapy was still being put into practice in many states despite being proven not to work. Fun fact, the inventor of electroshock therapy is Robert Galbraith Heath, and Robert Galbraith is the pen name that acclaimed Harry Potter scribbler Just Kidding Rowling uses when she's trying to write a novel based on an old, tired, hateful, transphobic trope about a fictional transgender serial killer. It's funny how during this time when J.K. Rowling first started publishing Harry Potter, her books were targeted by religious rights organizations for promoting witchcraft, but now she's one of them because they're united in being hateful. Funny how times have changed, Rowling. How does it feel to be part of the same patriarchy that targeted you in the past, cunt? Oh, okay. Anyway, But I'm a Cheerleader was released on September 12, 1999 and was directed by Jamie Babbitt, who has also directed many television shows such as Gilmore Girls, Malcolm in the Middle, The L Word, Silicon Valley, and even other films such as The Quiet and Itty Bitty Titty Committee, which is a movie that I also want to review at some point in the future. When this movie was submitted to the Motion Picture Association of America, it was given an NC-17 rating for a 2-second shot of two women having sex while wearing clothes. When Babbitt was interviewed by Kirby Dick in his 2006 documentary film, The Film Is Not Yet Rated, Babbitt, among many other directors, made it known that gay films were more aggressively targeted by the MPAA than other films with heterosexual sex scenes in them. Keep in mind that But I'm a Cheerleader would go on to have an M rating for 15 and older in Australia and New Zealand, 14A rating in Canada, 15 in the United Kingdom, and with the utmost aggressive stench of irony possible, 12 rating in Germany. And you know what that means when Germany has a much more lenient rating system for LGBTQ+ content than your country does. That's a problem. So, anyway, Chapter 2. What is But I'm a Cheerleader about? Alright, major breakthrough. The film opens with Megan, a high school cheerleader. Big revelation, I know. One of the first things we see in this movie is a makeout scene between Megan and her boyfriend in a car, and it's extremely apparent that Megan is really not into what her boyfriend is doing. I mean, she has other stuff on her mind, other stuff that to her is more satisfying, is more fascinating to her. Her boyfriend is clearly also a very bad kisser, but he also is a fucking creep who pressures her non-consensually to keep kissing him when she says that she has to get home for dinner. So, right off the bat, we're off to a pretty bad fucking start. This is good for story building and world building. We actually get to see how this movie operates, and this part of the movie continues to do so when we fast forward to the dinner table. Now, I'm gonna get really autistic for a second here. We're going to acknowledge that there is a single plate of plain-ass white bread just sitting in the middle of the table. Okay, listen, I know that this is not all that riveting. It is not the best scene in Fast and the Furious, but listen, this is a really nice detail that is worth talking about. Because you would think that they would maybe toast this bread before spreading butter on it, or perhaps they would have French dip au jus or something of some sort that would, you know, have some fucking flavor. But no, all we can really assume about this stack of bread is that they're gonna have untoasted white bread with their dinner. Maybe that's butter, I'm not sure. And what are they gonna have to accompany with that? The potatoes and gravy, are they gonna put that in a sandwich or something? The peas? The corn? The fucking steak? I don't know, maybe they're just gonna dip it in the orange juice? Anyway, listen, I point this out because as hyper-fixated as I am on this one single plate of 6 slices of untoasted white bread, this is probably going to be a metaphor for what is about to come in this movie, as this stereotypical suburban American family gather around and say grace for what looks like a really fucking boring, flavorless dinner. Also, the dad is such a weird character. He refers to his daughter as Poodle.
Thank you, Poodle.
Here's some parenting advice from some bitch who doesn't have children of her own. Don't fucking call your daughter Poodle. Like, that's fucking weird. I get extremely bad vibes from that. Also, listen to the section of the prayer that he gives right here.
Please help us to obey the roles in life you set for us. For all that is natural and healthy and sacred. In your name we pray. Amen.
So this gives us somewhat of an expectation of what we're going to be engaging in with this story. He explicitly calls upon the obedience of the roles God has set in society. Keep in mind that God means different things for different people, but because he is calling upon the specific roles that were set by this hypothetical God in this story, roles that must not be disobeyed, we can safely approximate that this is a God that represents the political power in institutional churches, and that God's so-called infallibility dictates the roles that these characters interact with.
Thank you. See you later, sweet. Tonight. See you tonight.
Don't forget your library books by the door. So, are we ready?
I'll be here at 3 o'clock. Jesus, I hope we're doing the right thing.
I sure hope so too, Mom and Dad. I hope that you're gonna teach Poodle's boyfriend how to kiss.
Don't you hate it when they do that? I think it's fun. Maybe he just doesn't do it right. See ya. Bye.
Whoa, holy shit. You don't just go into other people's lockers. Are you fucking serious? That is an invasion of privacy. Not cool, friend. Not cool. And we're just in this guy's car, and he's being super fucking creepy. He's just driving all slow, being very watchful, looking very, very totally not sus at all. Then we get to the house, and what do you have it? It's an intervention.
I myself was once a gay. Now I'm an ex-gay, Megan. I work for a place called True Directions who help people like yourself learn to understand the reasons behind homosexual tendencies.
So I've got to break the fourth wall for a second. This is RuPaul. RuPaul is a drag queen. Just for the record, drag queens are not trans women. Trans women can be drag queens, but drag queens in general are performative by cisgender men. Sometimes gay men, sometimes straight men even. Tennessee Governor Bill Lee signed a bill that would make it illegal by a felony to dress in drag in public. But here he is dressing in drag in his high school yearbook in the year 1977, which means that he did something in high school that he now made illegal. He committed a felony. Why isn't he being prosecuted? Texas Congressman Nate Schatzlin made a bill that would restrict drag performances and define any venue that hosts drag shows as quote-unquote sexually oriented businesses. But what's this? This is Nate Schatzlin grooming the kids in a black dress. He is legally involving himself in sexually oriented business. This here is Ohio Republican Josh Mandel, who thought that it was more important to focus on calling Drag Queen Story Hour child abuse way more important than doing anything to help the people of East Palestine. Made a video about that, by the way. But here is Josh Mandel dressed as a drag queen in 1996 in the yearbook again. Wow, what's up with these Republicans being drag in the fucking yearbook? Look here, even former President Donald Trump is motorboating Rudy Giuliani's titties. And yes, that is Rudy Giuliani dressed in drag. So clearly none of these politicians would ever abuse children at all whatsoever. none of these politicians will ever involve themselves in sexually oriented business because they're too good for that. Remember, kids, eat your vegetables, read your Bible, bow down to God. Okay, sorry, that was a really long tangent. I'll try to do that less. RuPaul's show, known as RuPaul's Drag Race, has been known to have some transphobia mixed in there. It's also important to note that RuPaul's involved in oil fracking, which contributes heavily to climate change, which will lead to our global catastrophe. RuPaul being in this movie does not mean that I am ignorant to the things that RuPaul has done throughout his life. I'm just saying that RuPaul is in this movie. I'm just acknowledging that he's in here. RuPaul in this movie plays the role of a token so-called ex-gay conversion therapy camp counselor of True Directions, which is, as you may have guessed, a conversion therapy camp. Everyone there thinks she's a lesbian because she has pictures of girls in her locker, posters of famous musicians, a waifu pillow from the 90s, and of course her boyfriend's a terrible kisser, but let's not talk about that. Let's project all of our fears onto this person just because she's different than the rest of us. Also, the scene where they talk about her boyfriend's kissing, there's like 3 girls who respond at the same time, almost like as if they know what's going on with his kissing. It's interesting. We cut to the scene where they're in the car, and the mother gives her a brownie like, you're gonna need an edible for this one. Chapter 3. How does this movie work? So before we continue talking about the plot, I want to spend a little bit of time pulling the microscope back for a moment and discuss how this movie functions. I hope you've been paying attention because this is crucial that you understand where this movie is headed in a storytelling perspective. Conversion therapy for LGBTQ+ people is a very sensitive subject and has a looming dark reality that has led people to losing their lives. Friends and family have either come out of the conversion therapy completely traumatized or physically abused, often resulting in queer people taking their own lives. I bring this up because I know people who have been in these camps before, and I also know people who have been in these camps. Whether your friend, family, or yourself are admitted into it, you know the devastation of losing a loved one and how such a loss can be really fucking painful. So then with this movie, I've spent a great deal of time pointing out details like the dinner table that may seem rather minor to the casual viewer, but this movie is making these aesthetic choices very intentionally. The movie is deliberately making the dinner table unappetizing in a darkly lit room. The movie is deliberately making Megan's father call her poodle. The movie is deliberately making Megan's boyfriend a bad kisser. The movie is deliberately making Megan's friends violate her boundaries, working in cahoots with her parents to send her to a conversion therapy camp. I do not want the audience to at all think that this movie or myself are making light of conversion therapy. But if you've been paying attention, this movie is making these choices at the expense of what is called compulsory heteronormativity. Okay, calm down, relax. I know that for my straight viewers, that is 12 syllables, and the state of Texas is closing down their libraries, so I may need to explain what in the world that word means since it is such a big, gosh darn long term. Compulsory heteronormativity is the theory of heterosexuality being assumed as the default reinforced by patriarchy. This means people believe you are born straight as a default setting. It's the idea that you come into this world with the setting switched as straight. This belief is reinforced by the idea of social contagion, which is the theory that you can catch the gay, or that being queer is something that you inherit after you are born. However, this has been debunked by the American Academy of Pediatrics. I'll put a link in the description if you're interested in reading this, because it is in fact very interesting and a very captivating read, because it talks about the methodology of their testing, but just know that it's about as grim as everything I just spoke about, given the fact that these are deeply held beliefs about queer, trans, and gender non-conforming people, as this study does a great job of debunking social contagion, are really extremely harmful, especially to adolescents. There's no getting around it. It's a really hard subject. I've been working on this video for a fucking year. No wonder it took me so long. But this movie, with all of the oddities of what the casual viewer may consider to be bizarre, are actually quite exaggerated for comedic effect. And with all of these comedic exaggerations, this movie is making a satirical critique of compulsory heterosexuality and compulsory heteronormativity, and the idea of social contagion as a whole. In other words, it is cathartically making fun of straight people. Chapter 4. This movie is a genius work of satire. So Megan and her family arrive at the facility that is the conversion therapy camp of True Directions, where they meet Mary and her son Rock. This couple, along with RuPaul in the movie, make up the staff of this conversion therapy camp. These characters are routinely and entirely played up for laughs throughout the movie. This movie puts us in the perspective of Megan and the other students that are all there. A lot of things just don't make sense, and a lot of the things that are taught to these students will result in weird behavioral patterns later in life. This is because of what we went over earlier, which is compulsory heteronormativity. That's what the students are being brainwashed with. Right away, we are given literal nightmare fuel of True Directions propaganda trying to warp kids to think that being a lesbian is inherently bad for some reason. And what's sad is that whether or not these are real accounts here, the truth of the matter is that a lot of people tend to have mishandled conclusions for certain investigations just because someone is queer. People are often ostracized for being queers because we deviate from the expected norm of compulsory heteronormativity. So then this comes off as intellectually condescending hate speech right here, using paid actors to emotionally manipulate children when they are young and are unable to critically analyze this shit. And what's worse is that this is political propaganda. It is just being targeted towards children, and it gives off some really fucking weird vibes when you get really fucking down to it. I ask my audience that if you see anything in here that looks quite profounding, that you would want your children to go through this by force, fucking don't. At this stage of the movie, we get introduced to some new characters. This is very obviously Mary Brown, but it's also a bit hard to keep track of the rest of the characters who all have a moment to shine, and this movie goes by pretty quickly. So it is important to catch all of their names because they will all be important for later in the movie. This movie allows for queer characters a moment to shine, and despite them being in a compulsory heteronormative conversion therapy camp, they are all themselves, whether or not they take the training seriously.
This is where we sleep, but there's no inappropriate behavior allowed.
Inappropriate?
Like swearing?
No, inappropriate like fucking.
Meet the rest of our group.
Hi, Megan. I'm Jan, and I'm a softball player, and I'm a homosexual.
I'm Sinead. I like pain. I'm homosexual.
I'm Joel. I'm a Jew. And, homosexual.
We met.
Graham.
I'm Graham, and I like girls a lot. And, I'm a homosexual.
Andre, actor, dancer, homosexual.
Dolph,
homosexual varsity wrestler. How you doing?
I'm Clayton Dunn. I work in retail. I'm homosexual.
It's time for your first disclosure. Now, don't be intimidated. Why don't you start by telling us about the first time that you realized that you might be a lesbian?
I'm not.
Megan is in a really interesting position because she actually believes she is straight. But the reason why she is here is because people perceive her to be more sapphic than the straightest arrow on the cheerleading team. In a way, this comes somewhat as a shock to her because she has no relationship with homosexuality at all, as she identifies with being a straight and narrow Christian with a boyfriend, even if she's not entirely comfortable with that boyfriend. Because this moment right here essentializes what it means to be queer. Queerness is often used to describe an otherness or something that deviates from the status quo or the norm. We can see this in the previous scene where her family goes through all of her belongings as a means to justify their accusation that she might be a lesbian. But notice how everyone in this circle has come to terms in some way that they are LGBTQ, but not her.
Everyone reads Cosmo. Everyone looks at other girls all the time.
But you only assume that they're thinking what you're thinking when they look. But they're not.
This is explosively metaphorical with her disillusionment of compulsory heteronormativity. In her view, she doesn't think she is queer, but everyone else knows that they are all queer and that she's gonna be deemed as queer whether or not she likes it. This also takes a big stab at the myth of social contagion because she didn't think she was homosexual until she came here. And now she's coming to terms that she does like girls, thus defeating the entire purpose of her coming to conversion therapy camp.
I'm a homosexual! I'm a homosexual!
Congratulations, Megan. You have just taken your first step in your true direction.
As we go through this film, we're going to be encountering a lot of storytelling devices that are metaphors for compulsory heteronormativity. See if you can point them out, even if I don't do so myself.
I noticed that we sprung another leak in the ceiling. I'd like for you to get to it tonight.
I'll get to it, Mom. Jesus. Ow! I'm sorry. I didn't mean it.
Look, not in my presence. I have told you over and over again. No more sipping. Chug it like a man. Go on, chug.
There.
This scene is a great example of what I'm talking about, because how her son drinks this lemonade is so inconsequential to not just her, but also to literally everything else, that Mary's reaction to Rock drinking from a straw is feminine is a little bit fucking absurd, because men drink from straws all the time, and thus given her role at the True Directions facility, she feels the need to reinforce a gender role stereotype that men chug their drinks and not drink them from a straw. This section of the movie, or if you want to call it a curriculum, is called Rediscovering Your Gender Identity, which makes Jan's character very interesting later in the movie. Gonna put a pin on that one. But all of these characters are practically in a weird dollhouse situation, and it is Mary and RuPaul who are playing with these dolls. Each of these characters are placed in archetypal situations, whereas young adults and teenagers, they would never find themselves in these kinds of situations unless you're in the state of Missouri and your state senator is Mike Moon.
I've heard you talk about parents' rights to raise their kids how they want. In fact, I just double-checked. You voted no on making it illegal for kids to be married to adults at the age of 12 if their parents consented to it. You said actually that should be the law because it's the parents' right and the kids' right to decide what's best for them to be by an adult. Okay?
Do you know any kids who have been
With
married
marriage.
at age 12?
That was the law.
do you know
You
any
voted
kids-
not to change it.
Do you know any kids who have been married at age 12?
I don't need to.
I do. And guess what? They're still married.
Your elected official wants to legalize. But But what I like about these specific dollhouse scenes is that no matter how strenuous and how absurd these quote-unquote training segments are, at the end of the day, they are still themselves and they cannot break free from being themselves. And what makes this movie so good is that they are going through a journey of coming to terms of being themselves in spite of their compulsory heteronormative environment.
Shit, Miss Mary, I ain't the only one who don't got no root.
Andre, we don't use profanity or double negatives here at True Directions.
Chapter 5. Oh yeah, I forgot there's a plot to summarize.
Today, we are going to learn one of the most wonderful things about being a heterosexual. Friendship. So what I'd like you to all do is to start partnering off. Find yourself a friend for the remainder of the program.
Maybe you already picked up on it, but Graham is the love interest of this story. But Graham's character role to the rest of the students is so important because she serves as the reality check.
Women have roles. After you learn that, you'll stop objectifying them. Haven't you been listening to anything Mary said?
Well, have you?
Have I what?
Stopped objectifying them.
I'm still looking for my root.
Must be tough when you're such a priss.
I also wanted to point out RuPaul's story arc, as it is really hilarious, given that he is playing the role of an ex-gay conversion therapist, which makes his role at True Directions a fascinating double standard.
Boys! Don't you see how sad and pathetic you all are? Always wanting something you can't have.
Truly makes you wonder how often self-proclaimed straight people go through this their entire lives with so much stigmatized repression that they are unsure how to properly process that they're actually gay.
That's the wrong tab, okay?
Will you please hold it still while I'm doing this?
You're doing it all wrong.
No, I'm not. If you would just give it to me to do, it would be fine.
Girls, intervene.
The next section of the movie is called Family Therapy, and this is a really hard scene to get through, even with its comedic flair. All of the families of the students are in a session where they talk about their homosexuality. This scene reeks of 3 different elements: anger, shame, hatred.
Blowing each other after your fucking bar mitzvah is a little bit different than learning how to dog paddle.
That is totally uncalled for.
Well, excuse me, but we're paying a lot of money here to get these kids fixed, not sit around and listen to stories all day. Graham, I hope you're getting a little more out of this program than that.
Yeah, so I have taken the creative liberty of omitting this character out of the rest of my video essay, but this is Graham's father, and that is Graham's stepmother, and she had this to say later in the film.
This is exactly why your mother left. Are you ready to lose your father?
What the fuck?
I'm not sitting in any room with
Megan, it's your turn to report out your route.
This continues to be a satire, as Megan does in fact try to take this curriculum very seriously.
You know, we've kind of been like this greeting card family. And then there was that one year where, well, Dad was unemployed and Mom had to support us.
Wait a minute, that was only for 9 months. And then I was offered a much better job at the plant.
Well, maybe seeing Mom kind of being the dad, maybe I got kind of the wrong idea about the roles of men and women.
Absolutely. You know, I can't believe that you didn't mention this earlier. Your father was emasculated, your mother was domineering.
I fucking love this scene, because what this movie managed to do is to put the perspective not on the child who is in camp, but on the parent who is responsible for raising the child. Because what Megan described with her father being out of work, not supporting the family, it was a breach of her father's expected gender role. And keep in mind, Megan came to this facility thinking she was straight this entire time, that she believed there was nothing wrong with her. But now that she's been confronted with the concept of obeying gender norms and expected gender roles, she's forced to think about how there may have been some sort of social contagion within how she was raised. And now, out of nowhere, it becomes a conflict of interest for her parents. Because I think we can all agree that people are just out of work sometimes, and it is hard to land a new job in the United States. Sometimes other family members do need to chime in order to make ends meet sustainably. So by that standard, we can agree that there's nothing wrong with the mom bringing home the bread, but how well off do you think they would be if they stuck to the gender norms, that the dad had to be the breadwinner? Do you think they would even be alive today?
Well, not exactly.
There's a few moments in the movie where we get to see...
Free time's up in 20! That means inside.
Oh my god, this is one of my favorite running gags throughout the entire movie, and it gets funnier every moment. Anyway, I just wanted to point out that there's often some downtime with some of these side characters, and I like how the movie doesn't resort to stereotypes, but instead it just lets them be themselves. Like, they're just playing patty cake and just vibing. And that really contrasts with how the facility functions. Almost like they're having downtime in spite of their conversion therapy. Some of the kids receive a mysterious letter that reads, "Another way out. Explore your alternatives. Live free, love free. Meet out front. Midnight this Saturday."
Parents didn't stay very long.
Well, I imagine it gets uncomfortable sitting that long with a stick up your ass.
I'm sure they're just trying to do what's best for you.
I thought it was just an act, but you really are sweet as fucking pie, aren't you? This is bullshit, Megan. It doesn't work. You are who you are. The only trick is not getting caught.
The movie continues when it becomes more obvious that Megan has feelings for Graham. Megan is just all about Graham, can't get enough of Graham. Like, she's really into Graham. And I didn't know how to explain this before, but I'm gonna have to explain it now. You see, this girl here is also into Graham. She's the one who said that she liked pain. And that red thing in her blanket is a device that allows for her to shock herself to supposedly resist temptation. Clearly it doesn't work for her, and clearly it's not working for Megan. While Megan is trying to get herself off, she finds two other people in Mary Brown's office getting it on furiously. Being the goody two-shoe that she is, she rats them out. Dolph gets kicked out of the facility entirely, while Clayton gets thrown into a doghouse. The next day is somber in the air as Dolph takes his leave, and the other students don't seem to trust Megan anymore, being really hostile towards her. And I mean, I get it. You shouldn't rat out your friends like that. What the hell? This next section is called Demystifying the Opposite Sex. And really all this is doing is glorifying and further fetishizing the nuclear family model, with Mary Brown even going as far as to say this disturbing shit.
Now, it's important to make your man feel at ease when he comes home from a long day at work. Now, when it's time for lovemaking, Dan kisses Sue and touches her breast.
I don't know, I gotta ask the rhetorical question, how the fuck is being heterosexual by force at all something that is safe for children? In my opinion, conversion therapy isn't just harmful in the fact that it is erasing queerness out of children at a young age, but it is segments like this that really open the eye of the viewer of children being really vulnerably susceptible to predatorial people. Because in this scene, Mary is literally engineering these kids to follow the sexual urges and preferences of their potential future husband. They're not being taught consent, how to build relationships, how to set boundaries. No, in this scene, they are literally taught how to help men get off to them. And when straight people say that straightness is normal and preferred, this is how it comes off. Let's take a break from compulsory heteronormative brain rot and let's just enjoy this wonderful scene.
I don't have any friends.
What about you? I thought I did.
Do you know you're here?
Oh, yeah.
It's rough.
Girl. Later that night, Megan discovers everyone getting their makeup ready for an event.
We're sneaking out. Get dressed.
What if we get caught?
We're not gonna get caught. You're not coming with us, at least don't rat on us.
Yeah, the lingering feeling of betrayal from the last time is still very fresh on everyone else. But in an interesting turn of events, Megan chooses to sneak out with everyone to a gay bar called The Cocksucker.
Hi, I'm Lloyd Morgan Gordon. This is Larry Morgan Gordon. Glad to have you with us.
Larry and Lloyd are ex-gays.
From True Directions?
We were among Mary's ranks before we defected.
We're just trying to provide you all with a balanced perspective to see that there are options. In the end, it's up to you whether you choose to live a lie.
So you run like the underground homo railroad.
Allies, accomplices, and comrades, take notes. This is another one of those scenes I was talking about earlier when I mentioned that there was downtime and everyone is just kind of themselves. A straight person might hear the name cocksucker and think that there's a lot of fucking going on in the bar, but look how chill everyone is. Everyone is literally vibing in a really comfortable environment. Everyone is just being themselves, having a great time with friends, dancing their asses off. I mean, look at Andre, he's just so happy. Seriously, look at him go. Keep that flare going, don't stop. Megan is still trying to kid herself with being a good Christian, telling her not to fall for temptation. And then this shit happens.
Hi. Would you like to dance?
Oh my god. Listen, Megan is gonna reject her, and of course, she's perfectly valid for doing so. But oh my god. First of all, this girl is like super cute. Like, unbelievably cute. If she asked me to dance with her, and also I just want to say this just so it's out there, if you're trying to get with me, do this type of shit. Be assertive. Ask me if you want me to dance with you. Give me flowers. Donate to me in the Ko-Fi link below. There's not a whole lot to say about this next segment, so I'm just gonna do a lot of summarizing. Megan does eventually cave in and dances with the girl who just asked her to dance. And even though I'm jealous beyond belief, Graham did pressure her to do so. So that's kinda not cool. While they're dancing, Sinead, the girl who likes pain, asks Graham to dance with her. While Megan is dancing, she sees Graham and Sinead dancing, and she gets really jealous and storms out the back door. And it just goes to Drama Town real fast. Megan and Graham are out back arguing, and a lot of it is really hard for Megan to process because Megan has some conflicting feelings here. On the one hand, she's been brainwashed by not just True Directions, but also her family to think that what she is doing is really wrong. But on the other hand, she is jealous of Graham and that she wants to be with Graham, so she doesn't even know how to convey those feelings. Eventually they kiss and they make up, and it's really cute. But then Sinead goes and checks on them in the back, and Sinead sees what's going on. Foreshadowing, it's a literary device. They're on their way home, and everyone sneaks back into the True Directions facility to the coolest spy movie music ever.
Mary's coming.
It's the next day, and okay, hold on. Pause for 1 second. I need to give an additional content warning because this next scene is incredibly fucked up. I'm going to talk about it anyway, but if you don't want to hear this, please skip to this timestamp. Anyway, starting right about now.
Come on, just throw out the first thing that comes to your head, okay? Just think.
I already did. Mine is just as good as anybody else's.
I'm a heterosexual.
Not yet, honey. You're almost there. And don't speak out of turn.
No, I know. I've never been gay.
Jan, remember, you were... I mean, just take a look at yourself.
Yeah, I don't know if I have much to say here. I've been having trouble figuring out what to say about this scene. As someone who has also been a victim of exactly what this is talking about, all I can really say is I feel the pain in Jan's eyes, and what Jan is going through is a really disgusting form of assimilation. But notice here how similar Jan's situation is to Megan, and how Jan is put here against her will even though she does not identify with being gay. And like Megan, she's put here for how she is perceived. Later that day, Mary finds a matchbook from the cocksucker, and she starts interrogating all of the students at the facility. I also wanted to point something out. I didn't know when was the right time to bring this up, but Mary has somewhat of a smoker's voice, and smoker voices are a bit lower in pitch and warmer in resonance.
I want to know who is involved. Fine then, Graham. What do you have to say for yourself?
Why are you looking at me?
Because I found these under your bed.
I bring this up because a lot of people give me shit for having a lower pitched voice as a trans woman, but Mary here is trying to reinforce gender roles with her smoker voice. I just thought it was a really interesting detail. Anyway, Graham sort of puts on a performance and says that the conversion therapy is finally working on her, sort of to get Mary off her back, and then she confesses her love for Joel, which is a lie. But Mary buys it, and the scene is over, I guess. Mary may be off of Graham's back, but she's still interrogating the rest of the students. Megan gets a visit from her parents.
You didn't have anything to do with that
field trip to the cocksucker.
field trip to the...
Gosh, I love the detail in this movie. It's so good. In this scene, Megan is given somewhat of an ultimatum. Her parents say that if she went to the cocksucker, she would be disowned. To which this becomes somewhat of a good character developing scene for Megan, because it seems like she's been taking a few pages out of Graham's book.
This is bullshit, Megan. It doesn't work. You are who you are. The only trick is not getting caught.
So then how does Megan handle her parents' ultimatum?
Just that you don't have anything to worry about. I've been missing Jared a lot and can't wait to see him again.
Ugh, you can tell by the look in her eyes, she does not want to kiss Jared again. But apparently the lie works as they say goodbye to Poodle one last time. During the evening, Mary takes Clyde out of the doghouse as they protest outside of Lloyd and Larry's house. I don't know, maybe this is a hot take of mine, but scenes like this make me feel like straight people have evolved backwards. Because if you confront or retaliate, even non-violently, they will back off, they will retract their statement, and they will cower away. This, in its very essence, I think, is one of the most important lessons to learn in Pride Month, and queer and trans liberation. Because bigots and fascists and the state aren't gonna give us our rights, we have to fucking take them. Anyway, the frosting on this cake looks like it's gonna burn my fucking insides, as this is a scene where they have to pretend that they are straight.
You know, you were so good at being straight.
Like it's a performance, because that's what this is. It's a performance. Such a performance that it continues a running gag. And I think that's what we need to take away from here is, if you're straight, you don't have to perform being straight. You are just automatically yourself. But if you're trans or queer, you have to adhere to gender norms that are completely alien to your character. And notice how Megan and Graham aren't getting jealous of each other for flirting with the male characters, but RuPaul is. And Rock knows what's up, he's not stupid, he knows what's going on. It's a fucking performance.
Simulated sexual lifestyle.
And those of you who fail will be sent home. Boys with Mike, girls with me.
Nice smoker voice, bro. We get a montage of everyone doing their final test, and throughout the montage, Andre is looked at with disapproval. Meanwhile, Graham continues to flirt with Joel.
And I am passing all but one of you. Andre, you may pack your bags. Now there's cake in the kitchen. You'll want to rest up for the simulation. Michael, congratulations.
Ah, fuck. This is a horrible scene. But pay attention to this exchange right here.
I'm a sissy. No. You should be proud of who you are. Hello? I mean, you're more than just a sissy. You're nice and
and clean and smart and sexy and firm and luscious and
Excuse
super.
me. The last thing I need right now is some fruit who just proved he's straight telling my ass how sexy I am.
Honestly, I get where Andre is coming from, because a lot of what goes on in this movie is them selling each other out, and in large part, competing with each other to get the staff of True Directions and their homophobic parents off their backs. This right here is the scene that got this movie an NC-17 rating, so I'm just gonna cut through it. Megan and Graham have sex that night. It's not graphic at all. I mean, Fast Times at Rickmont High is way thirstier than this. And honestly, it's one of the more tasteful sex scenes I've seen in movies. But yeah, I'm not gonna show it because of YouTube TOS. The next day, Sinead ratted out Megan and Graham, sort of as a form of revenge. And Megan is taken to Mary's office, where Mary has a bit of an ultimatum of her own.
I'll let you stay and graduate with the rest of your class, but you must do me one favor in return. Partner in simulation with Rock.
Rock? I don't think that would work.
For the tramp. Oh, for Pete's sake!
Next up, Graham gets confronted by Mary and her parents, and it's about as much of a trash fire as you may expect. But this time, Graham gets emotionally manipulated into staying and doing the sexual simulation with Rock. What the fuck is wrong with straight people? Jesus Christ! Chapter 6. Have you seen Girl Interrupted? This movie is getting really heavy and really bleak. But I do think that now would be a great time to take a small break and talk about something else that I think would better complement the themes of this film. We're going to talk about a film called Girl Interrupted. While I was doing research for But I'm a Cheerleader, I jumped down some interesting rabbit holes about some of the actors, in particular Clea Duvall, the actress that plays Graham. In the same year of 1999, only a few months after the release of But I'm a Cheerleader, she would be in another film called Girl Interrupted. Some of the other actors in this movie besides Clea Duvall include Winona Ryder, who gets a starring role, Angelina Jolie, Brittany Murphy, and Jared fucking Leto. Oh my god. Yeah, spoiler alert, but Jared Leto plays the role of Susanna's creepy boyfriend, so that didn't age well. Make no mistake, in this movie, Clea Duvall plays a radically different character than she did Graham in But I'm a Cheerleader. But in Girl Interrupted, there are so many parallels between that movie and But I'm a Cheerleader that I just can't avoid talking about it in this video, so I'm gonna talk about it now. First, I'll start with what's different, because the list is not that long. Girl Interrupted is not at all a satire like But I'm a Cheerleader is. In fact, it is far more grim, and if I had to put the two together, I found it incredibly difficult to sit through Girl Interrupted. I even tried having friends watch it with me, and even they couldn't sit through it. So then why am I talking about it? Is it because Clea Duvall is in the movie? Well, partially. But let's break it down step by step. Based on a memoir of the same name, the story follows a girl named Susanna Kaysen. Her peers, which largely consists of her family, relatives, and boyfriend, perceive her behavior as unusual. She makes an attempt on her own life, and she gets pressured by her dad's friend, who is a retired and out-of-practice psychiatrist, to admit herself to the psych ward. I cannot really recommend this movie because there are a lot of depictions of mental illness throughout the movie. And I mean, it's dark. It does not get played up for laughs or anything like that. When we see characters in But I'm a Cheerleader performing their queer identities, this isn't really seen as a tragedy throughout the narrative of the film. But Girl Interrupted takes the concept of mental illness to such an extreme that the stories depicted in Girl Interrupted end in tragedy. Anyway, none of this is saying that the movie or Susanna Kayson's memoir is bad or shouldn't be looked into, but it is a tread to get through this one. One of the biting similarities between this movie is that the main character is admitted into these facilities against their will. Not to mention, the social stigma between homosexuality and mental illness is very, very vivid, especially in Girl Interrupted. One such example of this is when Susanna meets with Melvin, the psychiatrist. He does not disclose to Susanna that she's been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. Susanna had to team up with the other inpatients to break into Melvin's office in the middle of the night and look into her own files before she could discover that she's even been diagnosed with borderline personality disorder. This means that how they treated her in the ward during her stay has been entirely uninformed up to this point, as this story took place in the 1960s, back when the women's liberation movement was at a steady boiling point. Similar to Megan in But I'm a Cheerleader, Susanna also considers herself to be normal in spite of the other inpatients whom she deems as fucking crazy. Her words, not mine. But she got this diagnosis because of what was said to be her pernicious behavior. During Susanna's conversation with Dr. Wick, she asked Dr. Wick a pretty compelling question. How many sexual partners does a woman need to have in order for her diagnosis to be considered pernicious? As such a definition on the said number of sexual partners for this diagnosis continues to be ambivalent since there is no clear definition, Dr. Wick takes a moment to try to one-up her and make Susanna feel like she's crazy by pulling up the definition of ambivalent in the dictionary, despite Susanna's protest against the already arbitrary and unclear justification for this diagnosis. I guess I mentioned this film because as I was watching this movie, the theme in Girl Interrupted felt quite similar to the themes in But I'm a Cheerleader, even down to the theme of performing a role to appease the institution. But one thing that was radically different in Girl Interrupted than But I'm a Cheerleader was the message of being your true self. Maybe that wasn't the intention of Susanna's narrative in her memoir, however, and keep in mind, I have not read the memoir. I've only watched the movie adaptation. And of course, the theme of forced institutionalization is heavily elaborated on, but the tragedies of some of the other inpatients doesn't get a resolution, but instead escalate to the unthinkable, to the unmentionable, to the things I really cannot say on YouTube without getting flagged for it. If you choose to watch this movie on your own, be very careful. This movie is heavy, and I mean, it's dark. But since this is a memoir, what we can draw from the story is how the state handles mental illness and what it chooses to classify as mental illness. And wrapping this around back towards But I'm a Cheerleader, conversion therapy has a long-term homestead in the US empire. In some states, homosexuality is considered a mental illness, and in some states, like the state of Florida, it is flat out considered a sex crime, which means that even though Matt Gaetz has been accused of sex trafficking minors, it is queer and trans people who are given the death penalty in that state. Yeah, so for those who've been following my videos for a while, you know that Turbo Queer is not my first channel, and I discontinued my former channel due to the subjects of said videos being far too much for me to handle at times, and I thought that maybe starting fresh would alleviate me from being burdened with the task of having to make videos about the fucking transgender. But here we are, we're still fucking talking about it, and you're gonna have to listen to me bitch about it. I don't know. But in the fucking year of 2023, you have literal declarations from US lawmakers calling for the death of their own fucking children because of their gender identity, like State Representative Carrie Seekins Crow. You have US state senators like the aforementioned Mike Moon who are forcing trans kids to be transitioned because he himself wants to legalize 12-year-olds by getting them married to their. You have like Matt Walsh, who redirect people's anger from his own urges to 16-year-old girls because, as he has said, he believes they are fertile and that's his justification, redirecting that anger towards us queer and trans people instead. You have governors like Gregory Abbott who think you can reverse a pregnancy if it's a. Listen, I don't want to get political around here or anything like that, but I have been an anarchist since the age of 18, and I'm 31 today. I survived suicide because I transitioned, and I ain't looking back. And tell me something, with the detransition rate being less than 1%, most of which occur due to social and political pressure, what makes the state at all legitimate in its ruling that we queer and trans people are the problem?
The law you just signed banning transgender female athletes from playing on women's school sports teams. Can you name one example of a transgender child trying to gain an unfair competitive advantage at a school there in West Virginia?
I am one of those parents who lived with a daughter who was suicidal for 3 years. Someone once asked me, wouldn't I just do anything to help save her? And I really had to think. And the answer was no.
Well, Stephanie, I don't have that experience exactly to myself right now, but I will tell you this.
Not yourself, your state, sir. Can you give me one example of a transgender child trying to get an unfair advantage? Just one in your state. You signed a bill about it.
Do you know any kids who have been
With
married
marriage.
at age 12?
That was the law. You voted not to change it.
Do you know any kids who have been married at age 12?
I don't need to.
I do. And guess what? They're still married.
No, I can't really tell you one, but I can tell you this, Stephanie. I'm a coach, and I coach a girls' basketball team. And I can tell you that we all know what an absolute advantage boys would have playing against girls.
But sir, you have no examples of this happening. Why would you take your time to do this? Let's talk about other things that I can give you examples of in your state. According to U.S. News and World Report, West Virginia ranks 45th in education, 47th in healthcare, 48th on the economy, and 50th in infrastructure. If you cannot name one single example for me of a child doing this, why would you make this a priority? I just named 4 things that would seem to me like a much bigger priority.
All I'm saying is that if sex crimes in the state of Florida is punishable by death, then Matt Gaetz is well overdue for a state-mandated squad of his own. You don't get to be a just because you're a hetero child. In this respect, I feel quite similarly to both Susanna and Megan in their own respective stories, fiction or otherwise, and I think that's my cue to finish the review of But I'm a Cheerleader. Chapter 7, The Happy Ending We Needed. After Megan is kicked out of True Direction, she goes to Larry and Loy's house in hopes of being able to stay with them because she really has nowhere else to go. When they finally let her in, she asks them this really strange question.
I thought you could teach me how to be a lesbian. What they wear, where they live, you know.
Megan, we can't help you with that.
I just want to pause here really fast and say this is a weird question because these are gay guys. They don't know how to be a lesbian. They know how to be a gay dude. It would be like trying to ask a Puerto Rican how to be an Ethiopian.
There's not just one way to be a lesbian. You just have to continue to be who you are.
It's revealed that Dolph took refuge at this house, and Megan is pleased to see him. And as I've mentioned throughout the movie, every time that these characters are put in a queer situation, and as I've pointed out throughout the entire video, you can tell that these people are at ease in their own environment, not having to adhere to arbitrary gender roles. Speaking of arbitrary gender roles, this here is the simulated sexual lifestyle, and I mean, just look at them. Can you straight people with a straight face tell me that this is not grooming kids? Anyway, I want to single out this scene because Lloyd and Larry get into an argument, but pay attention to how it concludes.
So, Megan, what do you want to do now?
Larry, Megan just made a very traumatic decision, and she's still moving through that.
Well, I just thought that we could check out some schools in the city, and I could...
She's not ready, sweetie.
You know, I am just asking a simple question. I'm not interrogating her.
Into that aggressive space again.
Can I even ask a question around here?
Now I feel you moving into your victim stance. I was not attacking. I was verbalizing.
I just feel like you don't value my opinion anymore. Seems like nothing I do pleases you, and I feel inadequate.
Oh. I love my Larry Bear. Lloyd's sorry.
Larry Bear's sorry, too.
Okay, then.
So to all of the heteros out there, I really want you to just reflect on what you just saw. Larry got verbally aggressive, Lloyd called him out on it, and then Larry communicated that he felt inadequate for their relationship, and thus they made up like rational human beings. Now tell me the difference between that and this.
I drew a boundary. I drew a boundary. No, you just did it. I drew a boundary of abusive and cruel. You were not taking the car. Because if you refuse to do wifely things, then I will go pick up the groceries.
There is no groceries. I would have
steaks, wood pellets, my grill. I know it's an unreasonable request, but I'll go do it. How about you first? Hillary, how do you respect the man? Yes, how do the man respect? How do the man receive love and respect? No. How do the man respect? No, you're not taking the car.
Stephen,
You're not taking the car.
Stephen,
you are not.
Then I will ask them to pick me up. Would you like me to ask?
Oh, that's right.
There's no threat, Stephen.
I know I can be a little unhinged at times, but the heteros are fucking weird. When I think about compulsory heteronormativity, this is the strange-ass bullshit that I think about. And at the end of the day, I can't help but to feel absolutely sick to my stomach for the sake of these kids. Whether it's at a Catholic church or a conversion therapy camp, these are different institutions for the same sick bullshit. Megan and Dolph are at the Cocksucker, and they have a really interesting conversation out back.
I miss her.
She's scared and maybe she's making the wrong choice. But it's her wrong choice to make. You have to be willing to walk away.
What about you and Clayton?
Look, if he can't make a stand, he just can't make a stand.
Well, what about you? What are you willing to do?
It's graduation day, and they're all going to be heteros forever. They're gonna live the rest of their lives being not themselves. And Mary is queefing her panties all over the occasion. A bunch of homophobic families show up. Oh my goodness, this looks like a wedding rehearsal. Comrade Megan and Comrade Dolph are in tactical gear trying to sneak in hopes of saving their respective romantic interests, Clayton and Graham. Graham gets pulled to the side but refuses to go. But in spite of Graham's resistance, Clayton and Dolph hit it off pretty frickin' hard by the trees. So Megan does what I think is the most badass thing she does in the entire movie. It's incredibly cheesy, but I mean...
Graham,
1, 2, 3, 4. I won't take no anymore. 5, 6, 7, 8. I want you to be my mate. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're the one that I adore. 5, 6, 7, 8. Don't run from me, 'cause this is fate.
Breathe into my hands, I'll cup them like a glass to drink from.
I love you. Megan, you stop it this instant. You will wallow in the swamp of your homosexual depravity.
Yeah, shut the fuck up, Mary. Life is short, and we're not your weird-ass hetero dolls in your dollhouse. But I want to take a minute to just fucking guess. This fucking movie really fucking hits home for me on a very emotional level. Every time I watch this movie, even right now, I tear the fuck up because of how just beautiful this ending is. It really is like the best ending to this kind of movie ever. And this is the kind of ending to a queer movie that queer people need to have. And that makes this film just, God, I love it. Cheers to that happy ending. And this is one of those movies where when the movie ends, you kind of didn't want it to end because you just wanted to live it again, sort of. Like, you want to live that moment where she finally liberates her and her true love, and they run off to wherever. Like, of course, who knows where they're gonna end up. This is one of those movies where you just feel like an emotional attachment to all of the characters, especially the love interest. It is also in better taste than most films. Remember when I reviewed Pretty in Pink? If you've seen this video that I made a few months back, there's one primary thing to remember. The main character, who is Andy, was surrounded by men who only wanted her for themselves. The issue was that Andy wasn't really the main character, but that Andy was the goal. She was the prize for the men to win. Thus, as a main character, Andy was left objectified as a prize to win for these men who have really fragile egos, as the driving plot sort of masturbates its way towards its conclusion. Hence why I just did not like this movie, despite that it had plenty of potential. However, But I'm a Cheerleader radically deviates from this. Since the conclusion is the goal of winning Andy, and we continuously see Andy putting up barriers, boundaries, saying no to these men, her boundaries are never respected, and because of the objective of this movie, those boundaries never do get respected. So as the main character, Andy never gets a liberatory ending. The movie ends with Blaine winning the prize. However, in But I'm a Cheerleader, the goal is liberation and living one's true self. And Megan, as a developing character, would not have liberated Graham if Graham has never told Megan to be her true self. And in a way, Megan sorta paid it forward when it came to liberating Graham. They are, for what it is worth, very compatible, not just as romantic interests, but as characters helping each other develop through their own story arcs. They are actually well-written characters. Chapter 8, But I'm a Cheerleader saves lives. Now, when it comes to queer cinema, or romantic comedies for that matter, Pretty in Pink is pretty bad. It's pretty awful. But I think But I'm a Cheerleader is the exact opposite when it comes to the quality of a good queer rom-com. But before we go, I want to talk about one last thing, and that is, do you remember Juno? I rewatched this movie recently, and holy shit, this movie is nowhere near as good as I remembered it. I saw this movie when it came out in 2008, And I remember liking it for the music, the style, the punk references, similarly to Pretty in Pink, and that because this movie was about teenage pregnancy, that this was a movie that was relatable to a pressing issue of the time. But holy shit, this movie is bad, and I need to talk about it. The movie follows a character named Juno, who is a 16-year-old who gets pregnant. And throughout the movie, all of the characters, including all of the supporting characters, all make really cruel jabs at Juno's expense. And unnecessarily so, as this is a time when Juno needs support. In terms of Juno being pregnant, there's a lot of victim blaming at Juno's expense. There is some repeated dialogue throughout the film where the characters say that it was Juno's idea to have sex with Juno's partner. Almost like a running gag. And even if it was Juno's idea to have sex, why does it matter? Juno needs support, and there's so much energy focused on not giving Juno support. There's another scene where a hetero couple has an argument, and it's a lot like watching a car crash accident.
Yeah, I have a menstrual migraine, so I can't really look at bright lights today.
Amanda, I told you to go to the infirmary and lie down. You never listen.
No, Josh, because I don't take orders. Not from you and not from any man.
No, you've been acting like this ever since I got back from visiting my brother in Mankato. I already told you, nothing happened.
Well, I'm gonna set up the apparatus. Juno, do you want to plug in the Bunsen burner?
It's my pleasure. I'm going to the infirmary.
Good. Call me when you get off the rag.
Fine. Call me when you learn how to love someone instead of cheat at your brother's college just because you had 4 Smirnoff Ices and a bottle of Snow Peak peach-flavored booze.
Good, Amanda. I'll be sure to do that. I'll make a note of it.
A friend of mine also watched this movie when it came out and had very similar feelings that I did when it first came out. And upon rewatching this movie, this is what they had to say. I realized something just now. This movie is trying to be the sit-het version of Queer, and it's abysmal. Now, this isn't a movie review of Juno, as I don't want to make it into one, but I am talking about this movie in this video because of the actor that plays as Juno. Notice how I say the word actor, not actress, and notice how I didn't say any pronouns for describing Juno. Juno, the character, is in fact a 16-year-old girl. And remember, Matt Walsh has said that 16-year-old girls are preferred for breeding because of their fertility. Or whatever. Look, I don't rationalize with but the actor who is playing the role of Juno in this movie is not a girl, he's a man. And his name is Elliot Page.
Elliot Page admits he was not okay after his breakout role in 2007's Juno.
What, are you ashamed that we did it?
No.
Because at least you don't have to have the evidence under your sweater.
Since Elliot Page has come out as a trans man, he has been very open about his transition, his top surgery, his divorce with his partner, whom in spite of their divorce, his ex-partner has been incredibly supportive for his transition, and honestly, good for him.
Yeah, I mean, I think as I talked in the Time article, obviously, in my childhood, things were, a bit different, but my mom couldn't be more supportive and such an advocate for the LGBTQ plus community.
He's also been incredibly vocal about his experiences working on Juno and Inception, and how his role in both of those movies were incredibly gender-centric.
We got back to the room and she was like, I have a surprise. And I already had to wear the dress, had one picked out, and I went in and there were 3 dresses laid out, new dresses to maybe see, and I just I lost it. I got so, it was like a cinematic moment, the kind of thing that would be in a movie where and that night after the premiere and at the after party, I collapsed.
And I think for the sake of this video, one of the most crucial values of this entire interview between Oprah and Elliot is that Elliot talks about how this literally saved his life. Absolutely life-changing for the better.
I wanted to share with people just how much it has changed my life. And I want people to know that not only has it, been life-changing for me, I do believe it's life-saving. And it's the case for so many people. And because there is such an attack on trans healthcare right now, when already there's such lack of access, or trans people who don't even want to go to the doctor, what you are hearing from certain lawmakers are actual, complete and utter, they're lies in terms of what they're saying about the healthcare.
Elliot Page has gone on to say that But I'm a Cheerleader helped him in the end.
In August of 2021, Elliot Page won the Outfest Achievement Award. Outfest is an organization that sheds a light on queer cinema, with the primary focus of LGBTQ+ visibility. Upon receiving this award, this is what Elliot Page had to say. I, for one, know that without the various representation that I was able to stumble upon as a kid and a teenager, there was very little. I just don't know if I would have made it. I don't know if I would have made it through the moments of isolation and loneliness and shame and self-hatred that was so extreme and powerful and all-encompassing that you could hardly see out of it. And then, you know, at 15, when you're flipping through the channels and you stumble on But I'm a Cheerleader, and the dialogue in that film and scenes in that film just transform your life. I almost think we don't talk enough about how important representation is, and enough about how many lives it saves and how many futures it allows for. It's Outfest and organizations like yourself that are completely changing that and helping get stories out in the world that I know are reaching people in moments where they feel desperately alone and afraid and like they have no sense of community. And it offers somebody a lifeline. And I know that representation has done that for me. And the meaning behind this is that Elliot Page matters and trans lives matter. We all matter. Trans kids matter. And the value of being your true self is something worth fighting for.
And I think that's what this movie did for me as well. It really helped me come to terms with my gender identity. And I think it does that for a lot of people. It feels like it's speaking our language. It doesn't try to coddle or make apologia for cis heteronormative society. It just says fuck you to all of the shit we have to fucking go through. And I really like that about this movie. It is so damn good for that quality. Because holy shit, I think right now, especially right now, we really need something to just burn our frustration with. Like, if you're queer and trans and you don't live under a rock, you know exactly what I'm talking about. This last year was fucking scary. But I think the lessons that I learned from this movie really resonate with me in terms of solidarity, togetherness, unity, and most importantly, being your true self. You know, I was gonna not be here anymore at the age of 30. When I turned 30, I thought I was gonna, you know, just end my life. But I'm 31 and a half now. And honestly, I have so much to thank for getting this far. I really didn't think I'd make it this far. And I wish that for everyone. Everyone in the whole world deserves to be free. Everyone in the whole world deserves to feel their true self, to be one with their own gender identity. Not have to fucking adhere to a binary rigid hierarchy. Not have to adhere to some fucking weirdo's dollhouse that is funded by the state. We gotta live free whether or not we're allowed to live free. We have to be gay and do crime. And that, my friends, makes life worth living. If you like this video, rate, comment, subscribe, like button, bell button, subscribe button, comment, donate to my Ko-Fi. Take care of all of that. Peace out, motherfuckers.
Death to transphobia.